2, 1, 0. All engine running.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucer. The Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat.
Just before 9 o'clock this morning in New York, the passenger jet, which had taken off from Boston, slammed into the World Trade Center. Thick black smoke blotted out the Manhattan skyline.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We are the Esoteric Roundtable Podcast. I know I say that funny every time, but I have to say the whole thing spaced out of my mind, because I feel like it's been mentioned that I said brown table in one of our first recordings, and now every time when I go to do the intro, I think about that comment specifically. I don't want to say brown table. Anyways, we are back, and if you can tell by our silly little clip art image of JFK here in the background for our viewers, at least, we have a interesting topic from our boy Ben here. He's been doing a little bit of some diving in, and why don't you go ahead and take over, Ben?
Yeah, man. So, throughout the past few weeks, I've had some topics that really just stood out to me, and I've had inspiration for, and a lot of research into. This week was not the case for me. I struggled immensely to try and find something to talk about for an extended period of time, and part of my daily routine and a large portion of my day is spent scrolling through Twitter, which is now X, but it's Twitter to me because I'm not calling it X.
Right.
But, I was scrolling through Twitter and something popped out to me that I never knew. I grew up watching several movies that had Woody Harrelson in it, and most people know him by a few movies like Zombieland and Now You See Me. Yeah, I think it's Now You See Me, the Magician's
shoot me
movie.
with my own gun. That's always what I think of when I think of it.
But Woody Harrelson, I've watched him in several things, but I scrolled past something that caught my interest. Woody Harrelson's dad, his name was Charles Harrelson, and Charles Harrelson was a hitman, a gun for hire. Who assassinated people. And he kind of rose to prominence when he assassinated Judge John H. Wood.
Now, was he just like a lone Craigslist hitman, or was he like a government specific hitman, or was it?
He claims to have been trained by the CIA. He claims to have been trained by the CIA. What really kind of got the heat on him was the murder of Judge John H. Wood Jr. And my source here, I'll just read a portion of it. It goes, shortly after Harrelson was paroled in 1978. So he did spend a few stints in jail. In 1960, he was sentenced to 5 years and only served a few months. And then in 1973, he was sentenced to 15 years and only served 5. 1979 was when he was sentenced to 2 life sentences. So in 1978, he was paroled from the 1973 15-year sentencing. He and his then wife, Joanne, were implicated in another murder. On May 29th, 1979, U.S. District Judge John H. Wood Jr. was shot dead in the parking lot outside of his San Antonio, Texas townhouse. Harrelson was convicted of killing Judge Wood after being hired by drug dealer Jamiel Chagra of El Paso, Texas. Wood, nicknamed Maximum John because of his reputation for handing down long sentences for drug offenses, was originally scheduled to have Chagra appear before him on the day of his murder, but the trial had been delayed. So the drug dealer who was supposed to be sentenced by John Wood was the alleged person that hired Charles Harrelson to kill him. So he was hired by him. And Harrelson was apprehended, and after that, he was sentenced to his 2 life terms, largely on Chagra's conversation with his brother from prison. Both Harrelson and Joe Chagra were implicated in the assassination, and Chagra received a 10-year sentence as part of a plea bargain to testify for the prosecution but not against his brother. In the absence of Joe's testimony, Jamiel Chagra was acquitted of the murder. So the guy that hired Charles Harrelson only got 10 years, was acquitted of the murder, and Charles Harrelson got 2 life sentences.
Damn. I mean,
So-
yeah, I guess you're the one who actually did the killing, but that's still a pretty
Yeah.
light sentence for somebody who paid for a murder.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And there was somewhere, I'm not seeing it now, but there was oh yeah, here it is right here. So this is kind of what got interesting to me. This is what piqued my interest, because I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting. I've watched this actor. He has another brother who's an actor. Never knew this story, never heard of it before.
Yeah,
But-
that's crazy. And also,
This is
like,
kinda-
you hear about people who have connections like that to the CIA or other government entities, and their children kind of have an easy pass up to celebrity.
So one other thing that this is what really kind of drew my interest to it, aside from the fact that I found it interesting that an actor had a dad who was a hitman, because I grew up playing the Hitman video games as a kid, that's always kind of been interesting to me.
Right.
But this is what really drew my attention. In September of 1980, Harrelson surrendered to police after a 6-hour standoff in which he was reportedly high on cocaine.
Hell yeah.
During this standoff, he threatened suicide and stated that he had killed both Judge Wood and President John F. Kennedy.
Damn.
That's
I mean,
kind of what
that's
got me.
That's a big claim, and you can be like, yeah,
Yeah.
well, he was on cocaine, but like the other half of that was a
Truth.
confirmed truth. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So why would the other half not be a truth as well?
Yeah, exactly. And so I know that there's a lot of things that surround President JFK's assassination, especially like, we see Lee Harvey Oswald was the guy that everyone put the blame on. He was accused of it, never admits to the murder.
Right.
He did an interview with CNN, which was wild to me that they actually brought the accused person that assassinated the president out to do a press conference with
Right.
CNN, or CNN posted the video. I don't think it was with CNN. Let me clarify that. But did a television interview with reporters and was asked if he shot the president. He goes, as far as I know, I never shot the president. He goes, that's the first I've heard about it, was when I was questioned about it. So,
Yeah.
there was a lot of weird things.
Yeah, and
regarding
people
that.
talk about Lee Harvey Oswald and him being like a traitor to the Russians and stuff like that, but that's
Yeah.
really seems to be misportrayed. He seems to have really been a genuinely passionate person for his country, and he did a stint in Russia. And goodness, I cannot. There's a movie that recently came out. It's called like JFK X, and they really dive into it. I think it's really interesting. You should watch it. But he was really like a passionate person. He really loved the president, is what people around him said, and like
Yeah.
he just would not have shot the president, And
Yeah.
putting him out in the public and getting him onto the cameras and everything as quick as possible, so they can easily be, this is him. This is the guy who shot the president. Everybody's really traumatized at that point. This is the first execution ever that's that publicized. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they just,
Well-
everybody wants an answer, so they give him an immediate answer to satisfy him, but they know that they're doing that intentionally because they're the ones who fucking killed the guy, you know what I'm saying? We're kind of at a point now where they have told us, like, yeah, we did it, what are you going to do about it? We're just not going to tell you exactly how we did it, so now we're just kind of having
Yeah.
to come up with how they did it, but...
Yeah. And the thing that's always perplexed me on this is that Oswald never admitted to killing President Kennedy. Well, I mean, if he did do it, I don't see, if he was caught, why he would have reason to lie other than the fact that he thought he could get out of it.
Right.
But two, I mean, he was assassinated shortly after his imprisonment in the police headquarters basement. He gets shot in the police headquarters basement by someone who was not a police officer. Jack Ruby killed him.
Jack Ruby, the owner of the nightclub. Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of things to me have always stood out to the JFK case, and I this kind of led me down a spiral because I've always
have you ever seen the picture of Oswald and Jack Ruby hanging out?
No, I mean honestly, dude, I didn't really realize that Jack Ruby assassinated Oswald until yesterday. Like I never really.
There's a. Let me get this up here. All right, let's see. We can go ahead and cut back in here. There's a bunch of images of him like shooting him and shit, obviously, but there is a picture somewhere of Oswald in Jack Ruby's club, like they're sitting next to each other, hanging out.
Yeah,
I'm just on normal Google, so of course I'm not going to find anything. I'm going to have to get some other browser set up soon,
but with the whole Jack Ruby thing and Oswald, like we never really had a chance to have him on trial, question him thoroughly, determine, hey, is this like a innocent until proven guilty kind of deal, or are we just going to put the blame on this one dude and assume that he did it? I mean, because there were 3 shots that were fired in Dallas when President Lincoln was assassinated, and only 2 shots hit him. But you see that they go up into this building that some random bystander claims that they saw somebody on the 6th floor hanging a rifle out of a window. Just so happens they go upstairs and find the smoking gun laying on the floor, and it's a bolt-action rifle. They claim that the employees were there, and the boss was like, oh, I have one employee missing. It's Lee Harvey Oswald, and he came in this morning holding a 38-inch brown paper bag, and it must have been toting the thing because they found a 38-inch brown paper bag up by the window by the gun. But I'm thinking here, this actually prompted me to pull out my tape measure, and I don't know if you can tell. This is the end of it here. This is the base of it. One is I was thinking there was like he walked in with a brown paper bag, and I'm like, if he would have to hold that bag up to his chest. I'm 6'2", so me standing up, I held this tape measure up to my chest and was like, that's how far I'd have to hold it up to walk around with a 38-inch brown paper bag. Oh man, I've never seen a rifle unless the rifle
had brown
was
paper bags bust with a fucking apple in them on school lunch or school field trips before. I don't imagine toting around a whole rifle.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about that, a steel barrel, unless it was broken down and the bolt was removed from it and everything was just in pieces. I don't know how you're fitting that in a brown paper bag that's 38 inches long. And that's saying that the bag wouldn't have been rolled up. That would have been the exact length of the bag, so it would just be hanging open with the gun poking out the end of it or something. It's just weird. It's just weird to me. But when I see that someone like Charles Harrelson, who apparently had nothing to hide about he was already caught. I killed Judge Wood. I was convicted of that, but I also shot President Kennedy. I'm going to be life in prison regardless for shooting a federal judge, killing a federal judge for hire. Why not just tell you I also had something to do with JFK?
Yeah, my life is over. You might as well just kill me too.
Why not? Yeah, he was already threatening suicide. Somebody who has nothing to lose, I really don't see what the thing. But also, I was reading more in this, and it says in a television interview after Harrelson's arrest, Harrelson said, at the same time I said I had killed the judge, I said I had killed Kennedy, which might give you an idea to the state of my mind at the time. He said that the statements made during the standoff were an effort to elongate my life. I'm really not like. You were high on cocaine. They already knew you killed Judge Wood. But, I mean, why would you retract that at that time? Like, hey, we put the blame on Oswald. You better, pedal back on those statements about killing Kennedy or getting people suspicious, Especially since, I was listening to the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. His very first episode of his podcast is about the JFK assassination.
Damn, really? That's crazy.
Yeah, I rolled way back to the very first episode. And in that, I had heard something that I'd never knew before, that the term conspiracy theory was coined after the assassination of JFK. I never realized that, never really wondered when that term came about. So I have seen some weird things that happened after the death of JFK that's kind of made me suspicious. Like, he was taken to the hospital in Dallas. The doctor did not want to release his body to the Secret Service. They
Yeah,
forced
they
him.
had to come in like guns blaring to get him out of there.
Yeah, and not only that is they illegally acquired President Kennedy's body because based on Texas law, it was illegally acquired.
Right.
They transport his body to Maryland, and then 2 military doctors, not board licensed medical doctors, did the autopsy on President Kennedy.
Yeah.
And they had removed his brain during the autopsy and apparently stored it. And then years later, the brain has went missing and is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I know you're not going to be able to see it, but for our viewers, I have the film up right now on the screen that I was referencing earlier, JFK X Solving the Crime of the Century. It is on Amazon Prime, at least that's what I'm looking at it on here. I really suggest, these guys were on the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast talking about this, and it's just the entire narrative that's given to us is so easily crumbled, you know what I'm saying? And like the film we have of the incident happening, there's a big cut in the middle. I guess not a big cut, it's only like a few frames, but there's a cut in the middle, and it's like, why would you cut that out? And there's just a bunch of stuff and a bunch of weird about the. And there's also there's this police officer in Dallas, and his name, it's slipping me, but they called him JFK because he looked just like JFK, right? And he is the police officer that like Oswald shot supposedly when he was running away, because apparently Oswald shot JFK and then shot a police officer as he was running. And the police officer he just happened to kill like also looks like JFK. And then there's something weird about like the body of that officer being, it's strange, his burial, and they think maybe they swapped it to where the body that we saw the autopsy of was the police officer that looked exactly like JFK. But again, this is all just speculation, because at this point, I mean, who even knows the fucking truth? Honestly, there's probably like 3 people in the entire world that knew the exact full truth, even at the time that it's happening. And then everybody just knew their own specific part, you know, they compartmentalized the rest of it or something, just how they do everything else, you know what I'm saying? To where like all you knew is you're just driving this guy named Jack Ruby to the police station, and you're just like, hey Jack, how you doing? Oh, you got a somber look on your face back there, what's going on? You know? And then he just fucking kills Oswald, you know what I'm saying? But
point blank too. So the Halson JFK assassination claim goes deeper. He denounced that claim in that television interview after his arrest, saying that, you know, like, it was my state of mind. I was trying to prolong my life in that situation so they wouldn't kill me. They would see me as a probable suspect after the death of Oswald. But Joseph Chagra, the brother of the guy who hired him to kill the Judge Wood, testified during the Halson trial that Halson claimed to have shot Kennedy and drew maps to show where he was hiding during the assassination. This was before his arrest and before his claim that he had told Chagra brothers this in private. Chagra said that he did not believe Halson's claim, and the AP reported that the FBI apparently discounted any involvement by Halson in the Kennedy assassination. According to Jim Mars, Jim Mars's 1989 book Crossfire, Halson is believed to be the youngest and the tallest of the 3 tramps by many conspiracy theorists. Mars stated that Halson was involved with criminals connected to intelligence agencies and the military, and suggested that he was connected to Jack Ruby through Russell Douglas Matthews. So there's also a direct claim to Jack Ruby, the person who assassinated Lee Harvey Oswald, straight to Charles Halson. A third party, suggested that he was connected to Jack Ruby through Russell Douglas Matthews, a third party with links to organized crime who is known to both Halson and Ruby. Lois Gibson, a well-known forensic artist, matched photographs of Harrelson to the photographs of the youngest looking of the three tramps. Later it says in 1982, Harrelson told Dallas TV station KDFW-TV, he asked him a question. He says, "Do you believe that Lee Harvey Oswald killed President Kennedy alone, without any aid from a rogue agency of the U.S. government, or at least a portion of that agency?" And then he says, "I believe you are very naive if you do believe that." And that's from Harrelson himself. So he claims to have, been behind the JFK assassination. He backpedals on that statement, and then later kind of revisits it in 1982. 2 years after that, and goes, "If you believe that,"
he was just shushed,
Yeah, if you believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone actor in that, which you also mentioned something prior to this episode, that the sequence of the gunshots and how fast they came out, like he was shot in the back of the neck, and then immediately after was shot in the back of the head. Yeah. Not only would they have to re-rack another round in that bolt-action rifle, it would have to adjust the crosshairs and then deliver that blow too.
Your accuracy. I mean, it's been retried by people over and over and over, and these are people who train daily, and Oswald had some training, but not as much training as the people who were trying to recreate this shot. And your first shot is going to be your most accurate, and that's the one you hit in the neck, and then your second shot that you rack and immediately aim again, and that's your perfect, you know what I'm saying? So there's definitely more than one shooter. And the film JFK X goes into all the spots where they think that there are people and blah blah blah, and then they do go into the grassy knoll, and maybe there was somebody on the grassy knoll.
Now, you also mentioned like the autopsy report of JFK's body that was released doesn't really match up to the clip of where he was actually shot.
Yeah, on the Zapruder film, you see his head bounce. It's like forward and to the left, which would be, you would get hit on the back right of your head to go forward and to the left, but the bullet holes didn't match. It was like on the left and his head still bounced to the left, or maybe it was on the right and the head still bounced to the right. I could be getting the lefts and right mixed up, but either way, it still didn't match up with the film and the pictures of the autopsy that we got.
Can you pull up? You may be able to pull up. Just look up the JFK autopsy results.
I will certainly try real quick.
Because they do show it. I found a picture that's like a little wide zoomed in frame of the autopsy drawing, where it shows the bullet holes. This one photo I see of him, it's the one that's kind of in color, does kind of resemble him, like based on his nose, but
yeah,
his
these
eyes
are rough.
And it's creepy looking.
These are pretty rough, dude. I'm honestly,
where the neck is pretty wild. Like you can see the gunshot
there's a couple that I'll show. I'm probably gonna have to end up like cutting some of this out, like blurring some of these out or whatever, because some of them I want you to see.
It's creepy, bro.
Some of them I want you to see, but I don't think some of these need to be shown and shit on YouTube. But
no, bro.
Like this one, the black and white version of the side by side, the side of his face. I think I'm comfortable showing that one. You can't really see nothing too crazy, but it also shows that this guy does not look like JFK. Me and Ben were talking about that in our cut here. This does not look like JFK. I understand your face kind of relaxes and muscles and things like that when you die, but this doesn't fucking look like him at all. I mean,
which we were also discussing that Justin brought up. There was a cop in Dallas that they called JFK.
Said he looked just like him.
This could have been him, but
Yeah. All right. I should probably stop scrolling. We're getting into JFK's memories and shit. I'm just scrolling past his first bike ride and fucking brain matter. I think we can go ahead and get back off of that before I get us.
Hey, when I was talking about autopsy results, I was meaning like the drawing.
The drawing.
Ben.
Ben was not trying to show you guys that.
Trying to show the drawing I sent him in Discord.
Yeah. Oops.
But yeah, I just had found the whole correlation to, I went down a little rabbit hole with Woody Harrelson, Charles Harrelson, and his connection to Jack Ruby and the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which I like I said, upon entering that research, the first conspiracy I'd ever heard regarding JFK's assassination was what happened with his brain. They removed it during the autopsy and it went missing. They claimed they had it in some kind of, I don't remember where they said they held it, but they had it for several years and then it went missing like 15 years later or something and has never been seen again.
Just scrolled past an article while looking through all this stuff that said Robert F. Kennedy, his brother, took his brain after the autopsy. So
where I got that from was I was not looking for JFK stuff, but I was scrolling History Channel on YouTube, and they had an episode. They had some kind of episode of a show. I think it was that the Unexplained series that I had talked about, a few weeks back. They had an episode regarding John F. Kennedy, and it was intriguing. And they covered it, saying, which I mean, how credible is any source? I really don't know, but that was the first I'd ever heard of the whole brain thing. And they even talk about the item number of his brain in the autopsy where they bagged and labeled everything, and it was in a bin, and I think it was item number 39 or something like that.
I bet the numerology nerds are going crazy right now. Oh my god, 39, 3 plus 9.
Item number 39.
3 is 9, minus 9. Now it's missing, subtracted, and the stars and the moon. My bad, numerology nerds. I don't mean to shit on you. That shit, honestly, it just goes so far over my head. So I'm just like a high school bully making fun of the people smarter than me.
But I had found the whole thing with Woody Harrelson and Charles Harrelson and
yeah, man,
Jack
that is
Ruby
super
and JFK.
interesting. And like I brought up earlier, there does seem to be a connection of when you have these government, connections. And we know that, excuse me, I just bumped into my desk really hard. We know that the government uses Hollywood and stuff as propaganda. I mean, the movies like Mission Impossible and all the war movies and blah, blah, blah that really like shined such a great light on the United States military. And also I'll put in here, I'm all peeking my microphone. I'm not shitting on like soldiers or people who are like fighting for our country in any fucking way at all. It's obviously like a huge sacrifice that we appreciate. I'm shitting on suits that have never even like been to another fucking country aside from like a party trip or something, you know what I'm saying? And they're just using these brave fucking actual human beings with souls as pawns. That when I shit on the army, I'm shitting on that. I'm not shitting on soldiers. But
yeah. Now, speaking of the propaganda thing with the government, man, even just as late as last month or a month and a half ago, that new movie with that Obama had a lot of say in, the Leave the World Behind movie, the cyber attack and the end of the world. Even that, man, I mean, a government official, the president, having say in a movie about the end of the world and a cyber attack and what it would do to the United States of America or the world. Not saying that it would be like connected directly to an assassination and propaganda regarding conspiracies or not, but it reminded me of that, even as recent as just a month ago.
I'm pulling up the Smith Modernization Act that Obama had part in. So the Smith-Mundt Act was in, I believe it was World War II, could have been one, where they banned propaganda in the United States. The United States government could not use propaganda on our people. The Smith-Mundt Modernization Act pretty much took that away. So it's convenient that the person behind that act is making movies about the end of the world and fear porn and fear mongering. And I've had a conversation with Jim and Ben. The start of the new year has really been a big jump in fear pushing and just pushing this scared mentality. And you need to be scared of what's coming next, and something's not right, and something's happening, and the aliens are coming, or the government's coming. And obviously it is an election year, so there is that you have to consider that. I personally have pretty much hopped off social medias and stuff because can't even enjoy scrolling through. It's just people trying to push some kind of fear something on you. It's really weird, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I forgot where I was
me,
going
man.
with that, but
I completely stopped using. Well, I have a Facebook. I have an Instagram. I don't use them other than like Messenger to message friends or something.
right.
But Twitter is the only one that I still act. That and YouTube, which I really don't consider YouTube to be a social platform for interaction with
not at
people,
all.
because I can control what I see and don't see on YouTube. And on Twitter, I have my stuff personalized, which is mostly sports stuff. And every now and then I'll see something random like this Woody Harrelson thing that I found interesting, and it was just a very small post about it. It didn't even really dive into it. I did the diving into it, but
Right.
Twitter to me has been the best one, mostly because I can control more things of what I do and don't see. And
Twitter, I feel like, is also, I don't use it. I've never used it, but I feel like it's like a kind of a more accurate poster or bulletin board of society, you know, what people are.
late. It was not about a year and a half ago, or right before the Elon takeover. But like I said, it still has its problems. It's a social platform. You know, there's things on there. There is fear mongering on there, but I haven't found it to be as bad as things like Facebook, where everybody's sharing the same thing. Everybody's, you know, reacting to the buzzwords and the hit pieces and things of that nature.
Right, exactly. Just echo chambering the same bullshit and blah blah blah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just me. I really have no desire to be on Facebook, because I see a majority of that on Facebook and Instagram. The only thing I ever did on there anyways was watch reels.
Yeah, I say I deleted my social medias. I just deleted Facebook. That's really where most of the fear mongering was being pushed on me, and to be honest. And my Instagram is just like stupidest fucking memes you could imagine, and also like either people getting in gnarly car crash like deaths. So thanks Zuckerberg for that. I just love seeing that in the middle of like hilarious memes, someone just suffering a horrible death. Or cartel videos, people just pushing like pounds and kilos, or I guess kilos for them, just bricks and bricks and bricks of cocaine, like moving them across the jungles and shit like that. And everybody in the comments is like, oh, I guess I made it to cartel Instagram. Like everyone's just fine with it. What the fuck is happening? So I guess that's another reason I couldn't bring myself to delete it, because it's like, what the fuck is going on there? I guess, honestly, that does fall into the fear pushing and shit like that, but I'm not scared of it. I just think it's kind of interesting seeing these dudes in the middle of the night with like 1,000 fucking kilos of cocaine on a little boat that looks like the not ShamWow, what's the Flex Seal, Flex Tape. It looks like that guy's boat, and they're all pushing fucking pounds through that motherfucker.
But man, I mean, I guess for some people that could be fear mongering.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I guess that technically
coming into our country.
Yeah, that technically does fall into the. But honestly, like, you know, the war on drugs, it's just a manufactured fucking thing. Anyways, it's set up now. But and you know those motherfuckers, like, if they took off their little shitty jackets, they probably have like CIA shirts on under there. They're like,
they claim there's a war on drugs, man, and then you have cities like San Francisco who just let it run rampant through their streets, and people sit there as lifeless zombies, like The Walking Dead.
Yeah, well, it's weaponized there. It's 100% weaponized in places like that, because I'm gonna go off of my woo-woo shit. Here we go. But the elite, they're ruining these fucking places intentionally. There is a way to let people do whatever they want without doing what the fuck Seattle and shit is doing. There is a way for us to be truly free without a bunch of fucking people shitting on the sidewalks and shit, but they don't want you to know that. So they're making this shit happen. They are ruining your last bit and hope of actual freedom, because now when you think of, well, when they have places where people can do whatever they want, look at Seattle, look at San Francisco, and blah blah blah. And so when every normal human being moves out of these cities and it's only the fucking sidewalk shitters, they're gonna come in, sweep them all out of there, probably fucking ship them off to just somewhere else or something. And they're going to do what they did in Maui. They're going to take that land back, and they're going to move all in there, and that's probably going to be their 15-minute cities. You know what I'm saying? Where it's automatic cars, and you'll never get to leave. But why would you want to leave? You don't need to leave and go other places. You have everything you need right here, and you're 3x3 apartment and you own nothing, but you'll be never happier. And blah,
That's
blah,
some real
blah,
George Orwell stuff, man. Some real
Well,
1984 style
it's
stuff.
fucking sounds like it until you listen to some of these
dude.
motherfuckers, dude.
Yeah.
It sounds like no problem at all. Oh, that's so far in the future. We could put that in a fantasy book while Saudi Arabia is building the fucking line or the wall or whatever the fuck they're calling it already. You know what I'm saying?
It also seems scarily, man. I mean, bro, you have like China with their social credit score and stuff, dude, where they have face identifying
Which
cameras
is just
that
our
couldn't
government fucking
Yeah.
testing out. I say our government, it's the elites using that place to test out was going to be a worldwide system one day. That's just
Yeah.
step one. They're testing it out on China because there's 14 quadrillion billion people in that motherfucker. If
Yeah.
you can get all of that, then it's just going to go out everywhere. We already have normal credit scores. Why the fuck wouldn't we
Yeah.
have social credit scores soon?
It's wild, dude.
It's fucking, it's no
Well,
good.
To transition,
Yeah.
I've asked Justin if I could introduce this new segment that we're going to have on the show from now on. Don't know how often, but maybe we'll touch on it every week and give updates and give new insight. But we have the Esoteric Roundtable Book Club making its debut tonight. We wish Jim could be here, but he's had some stuff going on and he'll return soon. But
Absolutely.
so far, I'll start off. I frequent bookstores. Anytime I pass by one, I tell my wife I'm going to walk in there, and then she grimaces and sighs hard, and
Absolutely.
because she knows I'm going to be in there forever, browsing aimlessly,
Looking at every book ever.
looking at every book. And I normally pick up, 3 to 4 books that I don't touch for 6 to 7 months, and then she's like, "You never read the books you got at home."
Yeah, exactly. We got McDonald's at home type shit.
But a few months ago, I was in Books A Million. As much as I don't really like shopping there, I was in Books A Million, and I stumbled across a book that I had never heard of, but apparently Justin was familiar with, The Secret History of the World by Mark Booth. And I never could get my mind off of it. I kind of flipped through a few pages in the bookstore, and it was in the normal history section of Books A Million, and one of the top books. I was kind of shocked. And I was flipping through it, and it talks about all these esoteric, belief systems and the breakdown of these secret societies and the existence of things in psychology and physics. And it was very, very interesting. So I ended up buying the audiobook. I don't always do audiobooks, but this one I bought the audiobook. And I do plan to buy the physical copy too, but while at work, I listen to podcasts a lot. So I figured might as well do the audiobook and listen to this. But so far through the first, the introduction and the chapter 1, it's had some very interesting things. I don't have a good grasp on everything just yet. I'm not that far into it.
Right, absolutely.
But I plan to do some more reading on it this week and get some more information for next week. And so far it's great. And if you ever have the time or a few extra $26 laying around, go buy the physical copy. It's been a great read so far, been a great listen. It's $16 on Apple for the audiobook. So,
Yeah,
I mean, really not that bad. And Justin apparently has been doing some reading too. So, Justin, do you have anything for the new book club?
Absolutely, man. I've been doing a little bit of reading, not so much though. I've also been on my audiobook grind like you're talking about. For one, I work a lot as well. I do my fair share of full-time and walking around in the hospital and such, just have the headphone in, usually listen to podcasts, Mystic Mark and such like that, but been doing the audiobooks lately. I started off with The Kabbalion this year, the study of Hermetic philosophy of ancient Greece and ancient Egypt, written by the 3 initiates. Now, no one knows exactly who the 3 initiates are, but this is kind of one of the source books for the information of Hermetics and such like that. I listened to the Hermetica, The Lost Wisdom of the Pharaohs by Timothy Frick and Peter Gandy. And I listened to The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross by John M. Allegro. And of the 3, The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, if you're looking for like a blow your fucking mind book, I really, really suggest that book, man. It is insane. It is so cool, and it takes an opinion on religion that not everyone may agree with, but there's so much more to that book than that opinion that I believe personally that it makes it worth it for everyone to to read it, because it really draws to attention the human correlation to like the divine masculine and the divine feminine, which is something we're going to be getting into in my bit of the episode here later. So something to keep in mind. And this is not boy parts, girl parts. This is divine feminine, divine masculine, the spirit of all, whatever would be the masculine, the mother nature, the creator of from. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself here. You know what I mean? But yeah, those are my 3 books so far. I have a lot more planned. I'm planned on doing a lot more books than social media this year. I guess that's kind of my resolution. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah, that was my resolution, was to read more books this year as well. A lot more than I read last year, which was like 3. So I'm going to up those numbers this year.
Absolutely.
I do touch a lot of books. I will say that I touched way more than 3 books last year. Just did not finish more than 3 books last year.
Yeah, well, I have the Stages of Time Matthew LaCroix book, and Matthew LaCroix, people don't know, he's fucking brilliant, man. He is following in Graham Hancock's footsteps, and I think he's going to overstep the amazing Graham Hancock before he's finished. Honestly, I think he's just brilliant, and finding links between ancient cultures and putting them into correlation where make you realize that everything is not so separated as we think it is, and shit like that when it comes to the distant past. So anyways, that's another one I suggest. I do own that one, actually, the paperback copy. I just don't have it in this room. But yeah, man. So the books that I've been reading are really, as you can tell, they all kind of have to do, except for the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, they kind of have to do with the Hermetics, because we did an episode a few weeks ago and about Thoth, or whoever, however you pronounce it, and Hermes Trismegistus, and which is just Hermes, the Greek god, and Thoth, the Egyptian god, put together, and because they realized the correlation between the two, again, all these ancient cultures being paired together, more than we think. But this one they knew Alexander the Great, he's the one who apparently found the Thoth tablets, and pretty much it was his like philosophers that put together that Thoth and Hermes were like the same, you know what I'm saying? They were pretty much the same entity. So yeah, man, I think soon we can go ahead and get into my stuff. Ben, you think we can go ahead and get started? All right, I think we can go ahead and ease back in here, ladies and gentlemen, for my half of this conversation. Before we took our intermission there, we were kind of going into the Hermetics, the books I was reading dealing with the Hermetics and such like that. And reading those books, or listening to those books, whatever you want to say, kind of gave me a flame of intrigue with the whole Hermetic Principles thing, man, because it was a lot of exactly what I was really needing to hear. And I know that sounds really cliche, and I'm going to sound hilarious to everyone, and that's fine. But it was really comfortable just hearing the principles. It's hard to explain. And then just the small amount of time that I've been trying to implement them into my everyday life, I just have noticed a big difference in the way I just vibrate. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like I can almost feel myself ascending, not like fucking ascending to the greater plane or anything crazy. It's hard to explain, but I could just feel my eternal vibrations just a little bit higher with these. You know what I'm saying? And it's really nice because they're not like a religion. It's not something you need to like bow down to Hermes or anything. It's just tools that you use to morph your mind, really. I mean, the whole alchemy thing is really based around you know, they talk about turning lead into gold and stuff like that, but I feel like those are more metaphors to turning negative and less shiny and less useful, I guess useful. Yeah. Less important thoughts, you know, less good for you. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling on. I'm probably going to cut some of this part out here. I'm just going on.
Nah, dude, you're good, man.
But let's see here. So I kind of want to get into them. I have the 7 Hermetic Principles here, and I kind of want to go into them, give a little bit of context to them as well, you know, and how I'm kind of personally using them in my life. You know what I'm saying? So the first one we have here is the principle of mentalism. The all is mind, the universe is mental. This principle is possibly the most important of them all, and is also the most difficult to wrap your mind around. Your life and your world are completely unique to yourself, as all in life is perception. When you consider this, you realize you are the creator of your experience in every way. With mental transfiguration, that is changing the mind to fit the task, as opposed to changing the task to fit your mind. You can change your perception on anything in this life and use that to gain positivity and growth from it. As an alchemist uses chemical reactions to change an outward-lying physical object to another, mental transfiguration uses a chemical reaction in your brain, an inward psychological reaction that will change your mind to experience these scenarios in a new, enlightening way. So I'm kind of just reading off my notes. I know I probably sound a little robotic that way, but I'm just, it's easier for me to explain them that way, you know what I'm saying? But do you kind of understand the mentalism one, Ben? Do you see where I'm going with that?
No, I definitely understand, dude. And I will say, this is not something, at least for me, that's that far off of what you would hear some Indian gurus kind of talk about.
A lot of these are going to sound like cliche self-help type things at face value, you know, and maybe they are, and maybe when I heard these cliche self-help type things, maybe my previous mind just wasn't considering them in the way that I am now, you know.
I will say, man, like I listened recently, and dude, I know I reference Joe Rogan a lot. I really don't listen to Joe Rogan as much as I reference him. It's just I've kind of watched bits and pieces and clips throughout time and listened to bits and pieces. He did an episode, I think recently, with this Indian guru, and he was talking about as far as like how you perceive things. And Joe kind of asked him, well, how do you recommend people, you know, who have this trauma, who have experienced trauma in their life, to be able to deal with this and find joy and peace? And the group was like, you know, it's all based on how you perceive that. Do you choose to dwell on that joy, or do you choose to dwell on that trauma that you experienced? Joe was like, well, what if they have like mental illness, you know, and all this other things, you know, like depression, anxiety? He's like, depression and anxiety are all fixated on your mindset and how you view things, you know? So if you choose to dwell on the fact that you're depressed, or on the fact that you're anxious all the time, then of course you're going to always be depressed and anxious, because that's what your mind is dwelling on and what you're perceiving yourself as. You perceive yourself to be a depressed person, so you are going to be a depressed person as the outcome. And I mean, I really didn't see it so much as self-help as more of a way of like, this is how you should think. And for me it was, and this is what this reminds me of, it's reminiscent to that for me. And I didn't see it as like your typical cliche self-help. I thought it was like, hey, it's a simple concept.
Right, and there's a lot of them kind of tie together, and they kind of go together and contextually, you know, and some of them sound exactly the same, but when you break them down, they're different and stuff like that. So, let's go into number 2 here, which in my opinion helps number 1. So the second principle is the principle of correspondence, and as above, so below. As below, so above. That one, I mean, a lot of people have heard that one. Probably the most famous so far, right? That's kind of another, like, in these days we hear kind of like the hippie-ish type people shopping at like Whole Foods, you know, talking about how as above, so below, what you consume. But, you know, again, that's another one where they are 100% correct in everything in your environment. So let me read what I have written down here.
Yeah, I was say expound on that a little further because I am a little foggy on the as above, so below kind of concept.
So this principle is probably the most famous and known part of Hermeticism, and indeed is an important part. This relates to every plane of existence. What you consume, you become. The thoughts we let ourselves think will affect our outward projections. The intent and willingness to learn in this life will directly correlate to our next experience, wherever that may be, etc., etc. This principle goes well with the first principle. Contextually, they both pair together to create the idea that we are the masters of our own reality. If we work on our thoughts and feelings and all things inward, our lives will directly reflect that, and we will be vibrating at a higher frequency, one more positive and loving. So it's really another part of the mental transfiguration. Sort of. It can be used in anything, but it can be used with the mental transfiguration if you're changing how you see things. And later in the principles, we'll be talking about polarity, how everything has two polar opposites, and if you are stuck on one polar opposite, if you're having this issue, you can try to morph your mind into the next polar opposite, the opposite of that, and in that you may be able to find comfort in the middle instead, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, do you kind of feel more comfortable with number 2?
Well,
that's all I have written down, so fucking figure it out, buddy.
Yeah, I guess so, man. I mean, it's hard to me. It just seems like
Again,
like
and a lot of this information
reflects what's inside. That's what I kind of gathered from. I don't know if that's correct assumption, but that's the way I'm trying to think of it.
That is a large part of it. Absolutely, your outward reflects inside, but I'm using a lot of I's and U's, but it's also like the way the world works is the way the spirit world works, and the way that like we as a society have kind of gone down a road of depravity. And I'm not on the side of the boomers or the side of depravity, I'm just here. I'm not saying we shouldn't have ass pictures on Facebook with grandma or something like that. If you want to do that, I'm there to see that. But I'm just saying, it's definitely taken a big turn from what it was in the past. You could say that we are shifting polarities from a large, modest society to an unmodest, if you want to call it that, and that it was going to have a direct effect to what happens in the next life. You know what I'm saying? Because there's going to be a lot of motherfuckers probably coming back to do it all over again.
And man, like just to go on this a little further, dude, I do have a little input on this. There is a clear shift, man. You can listen to music and just see the shift in society. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a change in music or new music. And
I don't mean to butt in and interrupt your butt in, but think about like the sculptures and shit from back in the day where just women walking around with their breasts out, and the stories of Atlantis towards the end, they talk about how it was pretty much similar to how it's getting now. So it's also later in the principles, everything goes back and forth. There are two polar opposites, and we're constantly wavering between the two,
So, and I mean, now you have things like, and I'm not trying to get vulgar or graphic here, dude, but I mean, the porn industry is a big thing,
absolutely.
And now you have things like OnlyFans, where every female you've probably met throughout high school probably has one of those pages and is trying to sell and peddle that. And, bro, 10 years ago, that would be unheard of. Nobody would be thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to sell out my body for money. I'm not downing people for doing that, but that's a shift we've seen, as, like you said, in the Greek times, where they would make sculptures based on that. And like, I'm not disagreeing with that lifestyle, I'm not disagreeing with that choice, but we seem to be on that flip side, because you went through the modest phase, like the 1800s, where women wore, dresses down to their toes, and,
right, exactly.
and all the way up to their neck.
It'd be like if you show your ankle, or if you wear a swimming suit that's not a one piece. Remember that was a big deal and stuff like that. Or when Elvis was doing his thrusts, and everybody's like, "What the fuck?" And now Sam Smith, whatever the fuck that is.
Going out on stage in a G-string.
Yeah, we can
and
go ahead
pasties.
just in that part there, but everybody
Yeah,
knows
dude.
what the fuck I'm talking
Everybody
about.
knows, man. It's
But
ridiculous.
anyways, yeah. So I think we can. I think we go ahead and cover that one. You know, we can move
Okay.
on to the third principle here: the principle of vibration. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. This one I find very interesting because even modern science has come to the same conclusion, using almost the same exact words, but replacing the all or source with randomness and chance. You are not a hunk of flesh and bones as we see each other, as a rock is not a mound of earthy material. All things are just atoms, some moving faster than others, bouncing off each other and creating the illusion of solid mass. It is our perception of these movements in atoms our brain catches and uses to create the world around us. The Egyptians called God or source Atum. It's A-T-U-M. To me, this explains the correlation between all being atoms and all being atom. Our source is a contradictory one, never seen by man but always looked upon, considering all is source. The atoms, or ATUMs, that make our very being are all source, being that we are also a part of the all. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
That way,
I see what you mean.
do you fucking get it?
I
Nah.
get it. I just don't see a big separation in between the two. I mean, obviously everything and on Earth is made of atoms, but I really don't see the big. To me, honestly, it almost sounds like a very early version of the physics theory, string theory,
Well, that's
where
exactly
everything is just particles and
why
you see it as a
it's
perception.
very interesting to me because this shit is from a long time ago,
Yeah.
before modern science has come to this conclusion.
And,
And it's really, I'm just explaining, I mean, a high school science class to you,
Yeah,
if you think about it
and
now, but those
understanding-
textbooks were written within the past 50 years, and this book was
Yeah.
written in the past 500 or so, you know?
a few thousand years ago.
You're right.
But I mean, to have an understanding of subatomic particles before an electron microscope, that's
Right.
pretty impressive. You know,
Right.
you can't even see an atom
You're right.
without an
And
electron microscope.
that gives you, I mean, you had to have that feeling, that connection to understand that. And the way that you
Yeah.
experience that through meditation or through psychedelics or however you connect with the source, through prayer, whatever it may be, you connect to the source and people find out these informations. And when you have that feeling of oneness and you have that feeling of all, it's because you are all. It's not a brief feeling. It's you understanding the feeling that you already have, that you are connected to everything and everything is connected to you. And that's just, like it or
pretty
not,
wild.
you know?
It's pretty wild too that it mentions vibrations and feeling a vibration. Because man, if you think about it, atoms are constantly moving and vibrating and at very rapid rates and speeds. They're bouncing around, they're moving, they're rearranging themselves. So
Yeah.
in a sense, vibrating, if you talk about moving very fast, to us it would be like a vibration.
Right. Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
and that's why when I was saying at the beginning, when I feel like I'm raising my vibrations, and I just feel like it's your spirit. It kind of does the same thing. I feel like, you know, if it can slow down or it can speed up or it can get in these sort of humps, or it can get dampened is the word that I use in my notes a lot. A lot of activities, like I did bring up the porn, you know, and again, anything you want to do in moderation is a good thing, you know.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit this is my podcast. I'm not scared to be myself here. I probably, you know, watch too much pornography, smoke too much weed, you know. I indulge too much in the things that are given to me, and that's something that I've been really taking notice of since reading these notes and things like that. I've been really trying to take control of my life and take control of, like, my thoughts, man. Because thoughts are you. That is you. When you can't move your brain anymore, when you can't move your brain, excuse me. When you can't move your body, this vessel we're in, your knowledge, your soul, you is all you have left. You know what I'm saying? And it's not that I want to, like, you know, throw this body away as soon as possible and just move on or anything, but I'm also just trying to work on my mind just as much as I'm working on my body, right?
Yeah, man. And I mean, I think there's a good balance too, man. I mean, not even just with things like porn. That was just the thing we referenced as far as like the sculptures and today's age, and then
Right.
the shift back with the very modest dress wear and stuff.
Right.
You know, but I mean, playing now entertainment isn't everything, man. What we feed our minds with plays a large part into how we feel, a large part into how our mood is. If you're constantly, and you mentioned earlier, you know, about you moving away from social media and things of that nature, because you saw the fear mongering, you saw all the negativity and what kind of news is being pushed on to us in 2024 so far. And if you're constantly feeding your mind with that, man, that's going to play a large portion into how you feel, how you're able to think.
You're going to think the entire world is these things. And when everybody kept saying, turn your TV off and go touch grass, that sounds like such an insult. But once you turn your fucking TV off and go touch grass and realize that the world was still here and it's going to be here tomorrow, and you have that realization that all this manufactured fear bullshit is only made to keep your spirit dampened and to keep you lessened. It's meant to stop you from reaching your full potential as not only a human being, but as a soul, as a spirit.
Yeah.
But anyways,
and even something as simple as reading too. Yeah, I can move on, bro. I'm just rambling.
Absolutely. So let's go to the principle of polarity, number 4. We mentioned this earlier. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. So that one's a little bit longer. It seems really beefy, seems meaty. It's probably, in my opinion, it was the easiest to understand, easiest to wrap my head around. Yeah.
Super simple.
Consider a dark room. You do not scoop the darkness out to get light. You just simply open the windows or flip the light switch. Light and dark are the same thing, only different extremes of each other. Love and hate are the same thing, only different extremes of each other. If you feel hate for someone, you can mentally change to the opposite pole of extremism and love the person instead. Not love as in kiss their feet, but love as in see yourself in them and see that they are also facing the same battles and choices every waking second that you face, and sympathize with the fact that they chose the negative route of thought, because at the end of the day, you are the one in control of your mental state through the study of these principles, and you are the one with the ability to walk away with a smile. The other person will more than likely sit and sulk in the negative. I guess that part I was feeling myself and just kind of going off. That didn't have much to do with it, but
yeah, well, this one to me is much simpler to understand because, and I hate to keep going back to science. I mean, just we've referenced subatomic particles. Dude, in an atom, you have polar opposites that sit in the middle. I mean, you also have a neutral, but you have electrons and protons. One is negatively charged, one is positive, but they work together to create a single atom. Magnets.
What you're going into right now, since you brought it up, it's kind of jumping the gun, but positive.
Oh, my bad.
No, absolutely, please.
Yeah.
Positive is kind of like the masculine energy, and negative, which they're calling it something else these days other than negative. I don't remember, but it's kind of like the feminine energy, right? So that's something that's going to come up later, and that's just something. So it's science. I don't like disagree with everything science says, like some fucking tinfoil hat wearer, you know, even though I do wear my tinfoil hat proud. But I think they're definitely saying this shit, but they're coming to all these same conclusions. But without the source part of it, you know what I'm saying? When it gets to the part, when they get deeper and deeper and they get to the real part of trying to answer why or how these things are really happening, and they throw their hands up in the air and they're like, well, it just happens with chance.
Yeah.
That's where the part is like that just doesn't happen with chance. You know what I'm saying? I understand I'm not saying all like science bad. I think science good, but
Yeah.
it's when you get to a point and they with these really important questions and the foundation of humanity and shit like that, and they throw their hands
Yeah.
up and like, well, we understand everything up to the very beginning part, and then nothing comes from something, haha, or something comes from
Yeah.
nothing, and it's like, what the fuck are you?
And that's my thing, man. And my quarrel with science, and like I said, I reference science because science is something that most people know about. You know, they know about subatomic particles and stuff. But the thing is that scientists work their entire lives to prove why something is built. They're deconstructing something to figure out how it works. They refuse to include the spiritual aspect of things to say, okay, this is to explain what we cannot explain. This is why you disconnect that portion that you were talking about, that spiritual side of things, where this is the source. Okay, it can't happen without this spiritual influence. You have these particles that heat and expand and make a big bang and make our planet, and then we evolve from fish into monkeys into people. You know what I'm saying? Like it goes back
and you know
there.
what? And even if they explain it with atoms being the building block, and I agree, ATUM, atom, the source, the all. Yeah, I'm just saying the God particle, if you want to call it that. That's what they've been calling it, but they call it the God particle, but not in like God like that.
Yeah, and I said to say this, that I mean, granted, I went on that spill, but. And not to discredit science, but I think they're missing the picture when it comes to, we can break it down, but it just works because it works. That's science. We don't know the true answer, but I think they're doing themselves a disservice by not adding the possibility that it could be the source, that it could be some God-like figure, some God-like influence, or some spiritual influence.
Right.
And that's what makes it. And I hope that ties in and makes sense to what you're referencing and talking about.
100%, man. So I think we can go ahead and move on to number 5 because it goes in with the polarity principle. So this one is called the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. Now, super short way to break this one down is we have the polarities, the two poles, that's the word I'm looking for, and we're constantly just swimming back and forth between the two. Exactly what we were talking about earlier with society and things like that, which is exactly what I go into with my notes here. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in here. Now that we understand the principle of polarity, this one should come easier. Things are always flowing from one polarity to the other, over and over like a grandfather clock's pendulum. Considering things like how modest society was in the not-so-distant past, considering things like certain clothes or certain actions were taken to be too taboo for the mainstream, now consider today's society and how there's really no line to cross anymore. I'm not on the side of the past views, as I'm trying not to be on the side of today's views. I want to be still in my decisions, and using the principles to master your own mind and manipulate your own reality is exactly how to reach that state. Seeing how we are nearing the extreme of anything goes, I don't suspect many more generations before modesty and body control take a swing back through, as the principles insist. So, another thing about pointing out the principle of rhythm and how everything is constantly going back and forth and everyone's opinions are changing with the tide, but the wise man, if you would call him that, he doesn't change his opinion with the tide. He doesn't follow the herd's opinions of, well, today, crop top good, but tomorrow crop top not good, And if you make your decisions on, well, I think everybody should be allowed to do whatever the fuck they want to do, and then, the tide swings back and you stand on that 10 toes, then absolutely, then you made your decision, But changing any You see it a lot with social medias and stuff. Everybody, their opinion on something goes to the absolute extreme, and that's just because it's the herd mentality. Everybody is super duper against something or super duper for something. And if you are anywhere in the middle or on the opposite of that, the internet will fucking rip you apart. You know what I'm saying? That's just what happens.
Even things such as like this, man. I will say the weird cases is not even necessarily following the herd. There's been times where I felt like listening to this where the herd can sometimes oppose each other simultaneously. For instance, man, you have your elections. You have people that mostly vote Democrat or Republican. When's the last time an independent or a libertarian's been elected? And I'm not saying that to push politics. I'm saying that because we see that there is a middleman, but it's not the popular choice. It's not the choice that people's like, okay, they sit perfectly in the middle of both of these. They have, they have ideas and things like that sit on the left. They have ideas that sit on the right. They meet well in the middle, but everyone chooses to go one way or the other. It's always a Democrat or Republican. Yeah. I'm not really well versed. I'm not sure if there has ever been an independent or a libertarian president in the. I'm not really sure on that.
I don't believe so. I really don't
believe so. I could be totally wrong on that, but we see that in common practice that people.
And I think that's a pretty good illustration of showing that exactly what we were talking about, the poles, and people definitely are on one or the other, and again, it takes a certain amount of mental transfiguration and mental strength to be able to stand on one opinion, even when the poll changes and now everybody thinks the other way. But in your heart of hearts, you as a person have made the decision that you believe this one choice is correct and stick to that and be true to yourself in that way, right?
Yeah. Now, I will say, if you have a belief system and you're very blatantly proven wrong and you continue to believe that out of spite, that's not what I'm trying to reference here. Like, I mean, don't make a fool of yourself because you chose to stand on an opinion that was blatantly incorrect. Be open, sit in the middle and really take an outlook on things that most won't, like don't be swayed by left or right or don't be swayed by the herd, the popular.
Don't let emotions
unpopular. Exactly.
Like the polarity of emotions help you make these decisions. Rationality is very important. So let's move on to principle number 6. It is the principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. So, cause and effect, I mean, you learn about that in elementary school,
Very young.
Right.
Hopefully.
While this may seem redundant and self-explanatory, I want to go into how this strikes me past face value. Seeing as we know every single action that takes place is either a cause or an effect, we can cut out much more meaningless questions and emotions about said action and begin to work through it logically with a sharpened mind. If you have an issue in your life that seems to linger about, even if you make subtle attempts or even great attempts to improve and nothing seems to work, it might be because what you're looking at is a ripple or an effect by a greater cause. If you're too worried about the wave, considering the cause of your boat... Oh, excuse me, I fucked that all up. Anyways, I'll go ahead and I fucked up my notes there anyways. But, I mean, cause and effect is a pretty easy thing, I guess, but it's also, I tried to think of it in multiple layers or multiple dimensions, if you will, because there could be an underlying cause that is an effect, even, you know what I'm saying? And the reason you experienced this hard trauma that you maybe did to yourself is because it was an effect of something that happened to you prior than that, even, And I think an important thing about pointing out these causes and effects is not to try to spend your whole life looking back, well, was this or was this that, or why did this happen, but when you are able to see them as a cause and effect, I feel like it's almost easier to push them past you, like, okay, well, this was just an effect, let's just move past it. Or I can see this may have been the cause, and instead of dwelling on it, I can just maybe next time try not to do this cause, make a slight mental change, and when the effects roll around next time, maybe it won't be to that degree.
I think, and in a lot of essence, man, I think it's much more wise, instead of reflecting on the past. I'm not saying you shouldn't reflect on the past and figure out, okay, obviously learn from your mistakes, learn from your past. But if you see, looking forward, anytime you're making a decision, if you say, okay, this is going to be the cause, what is going to be the effect of what I'm doing now? What will be the effect of this decision? What is going to be the outcome of what I'm doing now? And it may make you think about something a lot deeper before making a decision rashly.
Absolutely.
Especially, like, a simple example, you post something very controversial on social media. If you were to do that, you do something like that, like, what's going to be the effect? Am I going to lose friends because of this? Am I going to lose my job because of this? More importantly, So I think thinking of that in the present, obviously, if you have something notable from your past, you're like, okay, what could I have done differently there? What was the cause of that to begin with to cause this effect? And I also feel, man, while you were explaining this, and I hope I'm not throwing you off too much.
Absolutely, you go on, man. Please.
I also feel, man, that like the cause and effect, that not only does it have to be your cause that caused the effect that inadvertently affected you. For instance, there's some things that are external, third party, especially if it's something terrible, like if you were abused as a child or something. That's not obviously due to your cause. That's due to someone else's cause that's affecting you. So it's their cause and effect, but you're the one receiving the effect. And it's kind of profound to me, because an effect can not only affect you, but can affect others due to one person's cause.
Right. And in my notes that I jumbled up and fucked up, I compared the effect to a wave kind of going out around a source, and the wave doesn't only affect one boat. If it goes out in a ring, it affects all the boats in the ocean or the lake or wherever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's really profound to think about. It kind of gets the gears going.
Yeah, definitely. So we can go ahead and move on to our final principle here. And it is the principle of gender. And now, again, I brought this up earlier. We're not getting into you be whatever you want to be. Here at the Esoteric Roundtable Podcast, we are accepting and we are loving of all people. All right? This is not about if you got a willy. This is not if you got a woody. All right? Those are the new words, the new terms. Okay. This is about the divine feminine and the divine masculine. All right, that's my little bit before I go forward. Okay?
Divine.
Okay?
Divine. Not physical.
Gender
divine.
Is everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. First and foremost, again, I have more of my disclaimers starting off of my notes here. I cannot stress enough. Okay. We're not coming at First and foremost, this is not about your human body gender, and if you got a willy or not is exactly what I wrote in my notes. This is the divine feminine and the divine masculine that is part of everything in nature and spirit. The Father God, the spiritual source, the all, is the divine masculine, while Mother Nature and the birth and the creation of anything new is attributed to the divine feminine. We all have pieces of each within us. Think of the yin and the yang. Both harmonize equally to create the whole, while also having a small circle of each other in the wider part of the divide, symbolizing that while the divine feminine and the divine masculine dwell beside each other to make a whole, they are also a part of each other. This is the atom providing and being the atoms to create the perception of matter, and Mother Earth showcasing her beauty and artistry by molding these building block atoms into a living, breathing Eden for us to have this physical experience in. So it is the Mother Earth, the physical, what we stand on right now, the collection of these atoms that are given by the Father Source, the divine masculine gives us these pieces of him, these atoms, and Mother Nature forms these atoms into the physical experience that we are here for. Because when we transcend this physical experience and our spirit leaves this, we will be back with the atoms. We will be back with the building blocks, back with the source.
Yeah.
In conclusion, these principles are not to be followed as a religion. These principles are to be used as tools to sharpen and strengthen your mental stability, and to use that strength to transcend the low vibrational habits that are dampening your spirit. While some people look at alchemy as a physical thing, turning lead into gold and such, I believe this mental alchemy of turning negative thoughts and emotions into their polar opposites and choosing to live a more positive and rewarding life. Each time you catch yourself using these tools to improve your life, think of the very atoms that are shaking in front of you. Think of the breeze that blows gently through the trees, and allow yourself to be thankful for this experience. Because while we may or may not only get one shot at this life, both are great arguments to make sure to spend every second bettering yourself, which will better your environment. So within, so without. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that has been my notes on the Hermetic Principles. Ben, do you have anything that you would like to add to the finish of this?
Yeah, man. I will say, and your conclusion, it has, I mean, every time you talk, I have thoughts going through my mind. And
yeah, absolutely.
In your conclusion, I had a thought going through my mind, man. And not to go morbid or anything like that, or bring anybody down and be a Debbie Downer. But, I was thinking, when you go outside, you're experiencing life without harmony, without these principles and stuff, something as traumatizing, something as morbid as suicide, man. You think people often say that's internal, that's not external. I kind of feel as if I was thinking, that I'm trying to figure out how to word this.
Yeah, man.
You have people, man, that they claim it's internal struggle, it's internal this, it's internal that. They're having their own dark place. But in reality, man, what could cause someone to do that? That I don't see any way it not being external. What external influences would drive someone to that? It always seems to be an external influence.
Right,
and
absolutely. And it's what we bring up through this whole topic, and it is external causes, and the effect is it's dampening your spirit, or if people don't want to call it spirit because of their religious or lack of thoughts, then your mental capacity or the chemicals in your brain, whatever it may be, it's the effects, the causations, negative causations in your life, and it's a really unfortunate thing, Yeah,
and I mean, you can apply that to different things. That was just my thought that popped up when I was like that. Everyone talks about the internal. Oh, they're having internal struggles. Their personal mental problems. Their personal this. Their personal that. But really, at some point in time, it had external effect, because they're like, oh, it was due to my trauma as a child that I have this issue, and that's why I'm having this internal struggle. That's an external factor that influenced your internal struggle. And I'm not saying that these aren't legitimate things that people struggle with. I think we've all dealt with things like, internal struggles at times that were caused by external things. At the end of the day, if one constant is always pointed out, is that a lot of things are influenced, pretty much everything is influenced by our external, but learning how to work on your internal and to spawn your cause and effect from your internal is something that I feel is deeply profound. And
Ben, welcome
helpful
to the principles of Hermetics. I mean, that's exactly what we just are talking about. I feel like it's all just bouncing around in your brain right now, exactly how it's been bouncing around in mine for the past few days. I haven't been very talkative at work or at home or even in our group chats, because this shit has just been bouncing in my head around. It's you take it and correlate it to every single thing in life, and again, it's not taken to be something where you worship Hermes or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's reminding you that you can almost worship yourself. You can take the time to make yourself the most important person, and in doing so, you are going to improve the lives around you, you know?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you have to, and it just takes mental transfiguration, and horrible things happen, man. I've had some really rough shit happen to me in my life, you know what I'm saying? Obviously no physical abuse or anything like that. I don't want to portray that kind of thing, but I've had some pretty tough shit happen to me, and I've dwelled on it really negatively for a lot of years, and I think that's why I find myself in this predicament of using external things to try to soften that and try not to bring that up. But lately I've been really taking those things head on, because at the end of the day, if I can use these principles to transfigure those negative experiences into something better, and use them as fuel to say, well, I will never do this, or I will never end up like this, or I will do everything in my power to make sure my children don't have to experience what I've experienced, then that is mental transfiguration. That is alchemy, you know?
Yeah.
But before we get all off into the negative Nancy and kill everyone's moods and such, I really hope people can take these words, and I don't feel like we were being negative. I was just joking with that. I really feel like people can take these words, and I just really hope you guys, I don't know, hear it as much as I've heard it. I know that doesn't make sense, but in the beginning of the Kabbalion, it states that these words will not be heard by ears that do not want to hear them. Like, knowledge will not be learned by people who are not seeking it. And so that means there's going to be people who listen to this shit and point and laugh, and I'm fully prepared to that. I've let myself pretty open in this. I'm fine with that. But I think if you are a person who is like me, and you feel the change within you, and you are on your own, you know, spiritual ascension journey yourself, I think these principles are really going to be really important to you, and I hope they help you as much as they have been helping me. And
Absolutely.
With that, Ben, if you don't have anything else to add, I think we can go ahead and wrap this bad boy up.
Let's get it done. Let's get it
Right
wrapped
on.
up.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the assassination of JFK and the principles of the Hermetic Principles. Kind of two different, wild, crazy, opposite topics, but you know, polarity, baby. That's what we were going for. But please catch us next week, and please remember to keep an open mind. Peace out.